From Vintage Factory headquarters in downtown St. Louis, Missouri, it's the First Turn Podcast with your host, Andrew Stager.
As versatile as he was consistent, Trampus Parker made history as the first American to win 2 World Motocross Championships. He was an unknown American rider living in Italy when he burst onto the World Motocross scene by winning the 125 Championship in 1989 with KTM. 2 years later, he repeated the feat for a 250 championship, this time with Honda. Parker moved up to the 250 World Championship during the 1990 season, but his campaign that year was cut short after a freak accident when a rider going the wrong way on the track collided with him. It left Parker with a badly shattered foot. Parker made a serious bid for the 500 World Championship in 1995 with a KTM 360 against the Big 500 machines. Parker astonished the experts by winning the penultimate round in Dutch sand over sand expert Joel Smets, which was enough to challenge for world honors in the final round. But mechanical DNFs cost him, and he finished second. Parker raced in the burgeoning supermotard or supermoto racing scene in Europe in the early 2000s and was a top racer in that form of racing as well.
Adesso arriva Michele Fanton, ma attenzione, sembra che riesca. I protagonisti attesissimi stanno. Ma eccolo, Trampus Parker. E vince leader del mondiale 250, Trampus Parker.
All right, guys, welcome back. Our next guest, it's an honor to have one of the first Americans to go over, wrap up 2 world championships, multi-time Italian MX champion. He was also inducted into the Hall of Fame, AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame in 2007. Ladies and gentlemen, Trampus Parker.
Hey, it's an honor to be here and just looking forward to doing this.
Yeah, thank you, Trampus. And like I said, it's an honor to have you on. I've been, as we talked earlier, I've been highlight reel. I've been doing my research, and it's just amazing the career you had on those bikes over in Europe. But let's start out. How have things been going lately?
Well, everything's been going good, and in 2018, I became a Christian, accepted Christ, and a short time after that, I started preaching, going around to the races, preaching. Started getting invited to churches all over. Got to go do some stuff over in Italy, and man, it's been an absolute blessing because everybody asked me, how could someone like you become a Christian? Well, after 50 years of living the way I did, I needed something, and man, getting to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior was the greatest thing I ever did in my whole life. So now we just go around and preach, and we do online ministry every Sunday. And it's called Fishers of Men Ministry because, like Jesus said, follow me and I'll make you a fisher of men. And that verse has stuck with me. And that's what I love to do.
I know we tune in on Sunday mornings on Facebook to your word. I enjoy it. Speaking for myself, sometimes it was hard to find somebody with the word to relate to, as far as understanding, maybe in my opinion, not trying to, cut myself down, but just maybe get it down a little bit to where it's a little more understandable for myself, the common folk. And I appreciate what you do, just so you know. And I know there's a lot of others that do as well. And thank you for that. Um, but yeah, I say let's jump right into it. Let's talk about, how did you get started, on the bike and the sports? What was kind of the start there?
Well, my mom and dad gave me my first motorcycle when I turned 7 years old. It was a Honda MR50, which is actually sitting in my living room right now. The original bike that I won the 1978 NMA championship on. And my dad, he was all about going forward. My mom was hoping it would just be 50s only and then get out of it. But it just continued forward. It was something I really loved. I loved all kinds of sports, but team sports really got to me because when you'd be out there with other players and they weren't giving 100%, it would really frustrate me. And I was just somebody who gave 100%, and I never was the best at anything, but I just figured if I outworked everybody, it would pay off in the end.
Yeah. So I was reading an article. Is this true that your first race you won on a dirt bike?
Yes, I did. There was three of us in the class, and we showed up, and I believe it was in Manny, Louisiana, and I won the first race, and then things just snowballed from there.
Yeah, that's super cool. So let's lead on into it. So as you got older, when did you turn pro in America and really start racing in America full time?
Well, I won Loretta's in the B class in 1984, and my dad was the kind of person that said, "You're going to win in every class you race before you can move up." And so I won the B class, and then he said, "You can go to the expert class." He said, "But you cannot go pro until you get graduated from high school." And so I got to go in 84, winning Loretta's. And then I started racing the expert class right after that. And things started going really good. And, down in Texas, man, we had some great competition. And every weekend we was riding with a lot of guys that just made you a better rider. So I grew up with a lot of competition, a lot of great riders. And I had a guy that most people would know. He's 5-time arena cross champion, Dennis Hawthorne. And Dennis was one of the guys who taught me real quick that it didn't matter if you was fast. If you wasn't in shape, you wasn't going to win. And Dennis was older than us, but he was in the best shape of anybody in Texas. So in the end, he always won races. And my dad said, "When are you going to learn to beat that guy? You're going to have to be in better shape." And that's when things really started changing.
Okay, yeah. So I was reading some stats. I think you took a podium maybe in San Diego.
Yeah, that was my first Supercross, and I got third there. And unfortunately, the next week shattered the ankle real bad, and they put it back together. It still has screws in it today. And the doctor said, you'd never ride again. And I think it was about 3 months in a cast. And then my dad did physical therapy, and he took me out in the pasture where all the cows were, and we would jog in the pasture, and probably the roughest physical therapy I ever had in my life.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it sounds pretty intense. Um, so let me ask you this. What year did you make the jump to go abroad?
Well, after Magoo Chandler got injured, they did a benefit race for him, and I think that was at the end of 1986. And I went over there to do that benefit race for Magoo, and ended up doing good enough that I had an offer to go back. And then when I went over, things actually fell through, and I didn't the ride didn't go through. So ended up doing mechanic, and I mechanic for probably about 2 months for Phil Larson. And for you old people, you know who factory Phil Larson is. And he went over to Europe, and he was actually, there was two brothers. I can't remember the other Larson brothers' name, but they were both great riders. And then Phil wanted to go over and do the world championship, and actually was getting some top tens. And then he moved to Italy, and I did some wrenching for him, man. It was awesome.
That's awesome. So, and what year was that? You said you started racing over abroad?
Well, I did the Magoo Chandler benefit in 1986, and then I was full time in '87, and that's when I wrenched for Phil. And then M. Robert, which was the clothing company back then that sponsored most of the top riders over there, bought me a 500 the week before the first round, and we went and did the 500 World Championship, at least a couple of rounds of it on a box stock KX 500.
Oh wow, yeah. So tell me this: how did you end up in your '89 season? How did the KTM ride come about?
That's a pretty funny one because at the end of 1988, KTM didn't know that Puzar had signed with Suzuki yet, but they needed some bikes on the track at the Italian Championship. They just wanted a couple of extra KTM bikes on the track. And I really hadn't rode a 125 for probably close to 2 years at that time. And they gave me this stock bike to practice the week before the event. I went out and rode a couple of times, and I thought, man, I don't know how to ride a 125 anymore because that thing was so slow. And when I showed up at this Italian Championship race, and there was about 7 of the top 10 from the World Championship there, they actually gave me one of Alex Puzar's practice bikes. And I can remember I jumped on it that morning in practice at the Italian Championship, and I went out and I made 2 laps, and I come back in, and I can remember telling the guy who ended up being my mechanic, Farrell, I said, it's over. He said, what do you mean it's over? I said, there ain't nobody that can beat me on this bike. And he looked at me and he laughed, and he goes, that's just a practice bike. I said, I don't care. I said, this is the fastest 125 I've ever rode. I said, I'll win every moto today, hands down. And he just kind of laughed about it. And then I went out and set qualifying on pole position with about 5 minutes to go. And I pulled back into the truck, and he goes, what are you doing? I said, I don't care where I start. I said, as long as I get top 10 on the gate pick, I said, like I said, I win all 3 motos today. And that's how it all started, man. And I ended up winning the first 2 motos, but he knew the bike wouldn't make it the third moto if I rode it wide open. And I told him, I said, I don't care if the bike breaks. I'm here to do my job. And I said, I've already proved that I can win on this bike. And he talked me into backing down. I led it for a while, and then he got out on the track, and he started signaling me the bike ain't going to make it. And I backed it down and got second the third moto. And he kept telling KTM, he said, I got the guy that can win y'all the championship next year. And they said, well, we've already got our factory riders lined up, Bobby Moore and Mike Healy. And I told him, I said, man, I don't want the factory bikes. I said, because we're limited on what we can do. I said, let's just take all last year's stuff. And that way we can use whatever suspension we want and make the bike fit the way I want it to ride. And that's what we did. We just used the 88 bikes and ended up winning the 89 championship.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I said, I was watching it today, a highlight reel on it, and I was getting into it, man. That was some good racing. The starts back then was what really caught my eye. It was full bore to that first turn, and you see it today, but I don't think that it has that intensity level. And I could be wrong. It's just my opinion, but it was very impressive. So let's move on to 91. You're on a Honda, you're on a CR250, and what team was that?
Actually, we had the full factory Hondas from Japan, and it was the MP team, which was 2 guys that put the team together, Martin and Platini, I believe was the other guy's name, and it was called MP. And me and Michele Fantone were on the team, and it was good. Unfortunately, I did mess a knee up a few weeks before the start of the World Championship, which made it a little more difficult. And then we ended up I was the only rider at that time, top rider using the Dunlop tires, and Dunlop had a moose that was it wasn't a full moose like everybody else used and like I'd used for years with Pirelli. It was basically a bicycle tube with a little thin moose around it. We ended up with 12 flat tires that year out of all the motos. You know, we had 12 motos with flat tires. We were still able to finish the moto, but you would drop from first, the top three to back a ways. But no big deal. In the end, it worked out.
So those were full on work spikes. Like they had the parts on them, everything. That's awesome.
Yeah, that one actually had a little bit different frame. The full factory suspension, everything. It's I still have the bike. It sits in a warehouse in one of my friends' places in Italy, and it's about time I get it shipped back.
Yeah, I'll tell you, if you ever get it back, we'd love to come and do a video with you on it. Maybe we could have it on the show. That's amazing. You still have that. That would be super cool. Okay, so 91, you win the championship. Let's jump ahead. I think there was some ups and downs, maybe some injuries, if I'm not mistaken, in between 91 and 95.
Yeah, 92, everything was going pretty good. And then just reasons I pulled out.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah. And then so 95, you competed in the 500cc against Joel Smith, a couple other big names. So they were all on the 4 strokes. Was it the Husaberg? Is that right?
Yes. Joel was on the Husaberg, which KTM bought Husaberg 2 months before that season started.
Okay. Yeah, and so you came to the table a little. Some that would see it may think a little undergun. I think it was right on time. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was a KTM 360.
Yeah, it was actually a 358, the bike that I rode, and we turned it into a 4-speed transmission, trying to eliminate some of the gears in it, just to have a little less weight, a little less rotating mass down there. And man, the thing was absolutely amazing. So first gear got eliminated completely. Second was my first gear. And then the bike worked so good when they would allow it to work.
Okay. Okay. Well, I tell you what I saw. So after watching a highlight reel, I feel like you had some bad luck on the bike side, which I'll let you explain. We'll get into that. But from what I saw between you and Joel Smits, anytime you were on the track, I feel like you had everybody covered. And that KTM was singing. It sounded good, everything about it. And then at the end, like you said, bike failure, ended up coming in runner up. Give us your take on that season.
Well, at that time, I was one of those guys that was so confident that I could win at any given moment. And I always said I would win the 125, 250, and 500 world championships. That's why I went over there. I wanted to do the hat trick of all 3 of them. That year, I should have done it. When we was setting the contract up at the beginning of the year, I told them, I said, we'll do everything on bonuses. I said, yeah, y'all don't owe me any money up front. I said, I want to make the bonuses so big that I'll make a lot of money, because in my mind and in my heart, I knew no one could outrun me. And I knew that no one was going to outwork me. But unfortunately, 2 months before the season started, KTM bought Husaberg. And then that's when everything kind of went south. Every time I would start getting in the lead of the world championship, my mechanic would call and he'd tell me, he said, they're not allowing me to go this weekend. They're sending Giovanni. Be careful. And the first time I really didn't understand what was going on. until they had loosened up one of the bolts in the forks, and the fork broke in half at Luxembourg while I was leading, and it ended up near. I'm not going to say nearly killing me, but it broke a collarbone, a shoulder blade, and a couple of ribs, and knocked me unconscious for I don't know how long. But and then 2 weeks later, I had to ride in those conditions, which I was still in the championship hunt. And then they had another bike failure where when we pulled the cover off the ignition, you could see where they had hacksawed the shaft almost halfway in two, and then the ignition. So it was just a sabotage. So I couldn't win the title. They didn't want to pay the money, and then they wanted that new 4-stroke to win that they had just bought two months earlier.
Which really wasn't, in my opinion, in the game, from what I saw. But
no,
yeah.
And but they did it wasn't just me. They messed with a lot of the Americans that went over there. They did not want you to win the world championship. Going back to 1991, every time there was a drug test, my name was randomly picked. Out of 9 Italian championships, I was picked 9 times for drug test. Out of the 12 rounds of the world championship, I was randomly picked 6 times for drug test. So I was so scared to put anything in my body. All I would do was drink water because I knew I was going to be drug tested every single time. And the good thing about it was we had a doctor that was with me always. So every time I went in for my drug test, the doctor would come in with me. And that way, when we peed in the cup, we made sure everything was sealed and stuff. And it was just you got used to it. They did everything they could to keep you from winning.
Wow. Yeah, I've never heard that. That's an incredible story. That's a whole new insight on it for sure. But I tell you, even against all odds, I feel like you still put in a competitive run right there. I think we were talking, is it Neumar, Belgium?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, from the way they portrayed it and what I saw, they said that was kind of the race that kind of, really kind of threw a fork in things with that first turn pile up.
Well, the reason that ended up happening was during time scoring. I went out and put my first lap in. I come in, my mechanic said it's a good lap. I was still out of time. I didn't make it into qualifying, and everybody's looking around because everybody who had me on the clock's like, you're top 3. And it showed me like down in 20 something. So I'd go out and put another lap in. Well, until the last 5 minutes, I was still out of qualifying. And finally, my mechanic went in to where they was doing the time, and they were trying to kick him out. And he goes, "We got times on Trampus, and he should be top 3." And they said, "Oh, no, his lap times are way off." And he stood in there with his clock when I got one last lap in, and they put me up, and I can't remember where they put me up into qualifying, but which gave me a place on the gate that it was just one of them deals. Yeah. They did everything they could, and then they had certain riders that was willing to try to take you out on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see that in some of the videos as well. So let me ask you this. So I had the opportunity to live in Europe. I lived in the Netherlands, Paris, France for about 2 years. I was younger. I'm 43 now. Then I think I was 18. The straight American kid, backwards hat. I went over, cocky. I knew everything. How was the reception when you'd go over and race as an American back then with the crowd? And is there any stories from then when, any wild run-ins or?
Well, one of the things that I did that helped me was my dad was a pretty strict, straightforward type guy. And he told me, he goes, if you're going to go over there and live in a country and take their money, He said, you learn their language. He said, because it's disrespectful for someone to live in a country and not learn their language if you're going to stay there and take their money. So within about 6 months, I could do my TV interviews and stuff in Italian. It wasn't perfect Italian within 6 months, but I could get by with all my TV interviews and stuff. So it kind of makes me wonder if the people that's coming to the States living here for 10 years, 15 years, how come they can't learn English? But that was one of the things. And the people would respect you because you went out of your way to learn their language. Now, there were those who didn't want to see you win, but I also understand it because they had pride and want one of their riders from their country to win. So that's normal, the same way over here when John Michelle Bell come over here, people booed him and everything, but he come over here and just mopped up and won everything he could win. And so many other riders have done it. And there's a lot of people who don't like it. But in the end, I always think the best rider is going to win. And whether it was John Michelle Bell back in the day, Chad Reed when he won, any of the French riders. So as long as they come over, work hard, learn to speak English, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. What a career. 2 world championships. It's amazing. So let me ask you this. So in 2007, you were inducted into the AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame. Tell us a little bit about that. What an honor that must have been. I noticed in your class, I believe Mike Kudrowski was in there, a couple other notable names. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was something that they called up and said you were that I was getting inducted in the Hall of Fame, and it's a neat deal. I think it's something that a lot of people dream of. But man, I rode motorcycles because I love to ride motorcycles. I never rode motorcycles for the money. I never rode motorcycles thinking about getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. I just love to ride motorcycles. And I actually love to ride motorcycles in the woods more than I did on motocross tracks. But I was just good at motocross. And so when I got inducted in the Hall of Fame, it was something me and my brother and dad went up there and did. And it happened. But I don't see it as I see people all the time say, well, I'm in the Hall of Fame. You're still just a normal human being. Just because we won races didn't make us any better or any worse than anybody else. It just means that year we was the ones that ended up on top. But when I see these people that act like because they made it to the Hall of Fame, it makes them somebody special, it's still a voting system. It's still kind of a good old boy, good old buddy deal. And you see people that get put in the Hall of Fame that sometimes I wonder. But if you know the right people, I guess anything's possible.
Yeah. As we gotta be careful I word this, but as we get involved with bigger mainstream media, different, bigger venues, different levels of competition, there's a lot of politics. There is. But unfortunately, that's the game we play. That's how it is. And if you want to be a part of it, sometimes you just gotta, bear down and deal with it. But yeah, man, what a great career. And so I want to move forward. Let's talk about. So it was my first time last year getting to come to Henrietta to the finals. We had a little rain, but I tell you, it came around, and I think it couldn't have been any better for what you had to deal with weather-wise. It was a great time. The rubber band start, some good competitive racing, and to top it off, I had Tim Borgfield speaks very highly of you, and he'd always tell me, "Wait till you see Trampus. Wait till you see Trampus." And you guys got on that XR 200, I believe it was the 200 class.
Yeah.
And who was that? That was yourself, and I believe you had one of the Major League Baseball.
Yep, we had Clint Sadowski, who was a Major League pitcher in baseball, and then one of my dear friends, almost like a brother. I think my mom and dad had kind of adopted him into the family, John McLemore. He was on our team, and normally it would have been my brother, but unfortunately, my brother had gotten brain cancer in August and then passed away shortly after that race. So that was a race that was for him. But man, that was something that my wife come up with years ago, and she said we need to do a team race where you can have one ex-pro, one ARMA expert, and then you have to have one B or C level rider from ARMA on the team. And each rider rides 3 laps. So you have 3 motos of 9 laps. You come in, change the wristband. And it's one of the funnest races there is. And you can ride an XR200, an old YZ100, or an old RM100. And every year it has just been a success.
Yeah, I tell you, it was, so we got video of it, and when we get back on Mondays, we go through footage, or I do, and we look over everything. And sometimes there's so much going on throughout the day that you don't lose track, but you see things and you don't pay total attention because you're just trying to make sure you get everything. But when I went back and watched that, and then I think it was the second moto, I got to watch you ride, and I'm not, I have to tell you, you were flying. I I'll be honest with you, I'd like to see you on a 91 CR250 out there. I'd like to mic the bike up and just do some laps. Oh man, that would be a treat for sure. Maybe one day, you never know.
Well, right now I'm doing something that's fun because I preach at these races, and there's a new series that started up in Oklahoma. It's called Great Plains Cross Country, and I'm the chaplain at that series. And that's what I love to do, is go around and preach. But I also love to ride small bore bikes. So I started racing this series on a little CRF 250F, which is the little air cooled new version. Puts out about 19 horsepower. And I stiffened up the suspension a little bit, left everything else box stock. And my goal is, and I've already, I should have done it at the first race, but I got a flat. My goal was to win the 50 class, move to the 40 class, win the 40 class, move to the 30 class, win that, and then go to the open A class, win that, and then try to ride the pro class. I know I won't be able to win the pro class, but I just want to show some of these guys that when you come back and ride at 56, 57 years of age, and I'm at 57 now, almost 58, you don't need a 450. That's the last thing that any of us need to be on. And there's probably less than 10 guys in the entire world, and I'm talking your top pros today. There's less than 10 of them that can actually ride a 450. And Eli Tomac's probably the only guy that wants more power out of a 450 because they're already so fast. But an average guy has no business being on a 450 today. A 250 is more than any of them can handle. And so I thought, I'm just going to ride this little air-cooled trail bike to prove a point. And I've done it several times. I really enjoy doing it. And hopefully by the end of the year, I can win all the classes and get down to the pro class and maybe get a top 10 in that.
There you go. So will we see you? Are you going to be at Farm 14 by chance?
No, I won't be well, I don't think I will. Anything's possible, but the plan, I shouldn't be there because I got other things that I'm doing right now. Man, I get to do a lot of things with the grandkids. That's the one thing that we're having a lot of fun with. We go watch them play baseball and basketball and any sport they are. Matter of fact, I'm taking one of the grandkids with me this week, and he's going to ride his first cross country race. And we just got back from snow skiing with 2 of the grandkids, and it's just it's enjoyable getting to do things with them, getting to do things with the family, and life is just different today. It's all about God and spending time with family, because this past year, within a month, I lost both my dad and my brother, and things went really quick. So I want to encourage people to go out and do the things you want to do, because you never know when life's going to come to an end. I watched it with my brother, who worked out every day, who did marathons, who was in great shape, woke up in August of last year, had a headache, thought he had a sinus infection, goes to the doctor, ends up having 2 brain tumors, and it turned out to be cancer, and 4 months and 6 days later, we buried him. So it's just one of them deals.
Our condolences, Keith and Heath. I never had the opportunity to meet him, but I've gotten to somewhat get to know them through stories. I was talking to a couple people, and I tell you, I wish I could have had the chance to meet him, and our prayers go out to you and your family over that. And
well, the good thing about it is both my dad and my brother were Christians, and so I know where they're at. I'm not worried about it. One day I'll see them again, and I just hope that maybe for some of these people that's listening to this that don't know Christ, I was that way for 50 years of my life. I didn't know Christ. Didn't want to go to church. Didn't want to get to know those people, because I just always grew up thinking that all church people are hypocrites, which we are. But God loves each and every one of us, and he sent his son to die for us. And I don't care what you've done in your life, how bad of things you think you've done. Trust me, God is still willing to forgive you. And he sent his son down here on a rescue mission to die for our sins. And he's ready. He's ready to accept you. Are you ready to accept the gift that he gave you? If you are, reach out and talk to me, man. I'd love to tell you how simple it is. And you don't have to change. God takes you just the way you are, and he'll change you.
Sure. And it's a good time. Tell us about what you have going on with your Fisher of Men, I believe, ministries. Maybe where people can watch on Sunday mornings if you're open to that. I enjoy it. I think other people would gain a lot out of it. I know I do. But tell us a little bit about that as we wrap up, and just where we can watch it, what you have going on, and the floor is yours.
Well, since we started it in 2018, we've been going around the races. We've been going around the different countries. Every Sunday now we do an online ministry on Facebook, and you can look up Fishers of Men Ministry, and my picture will be on there. And I lay it out there, and I try to do it as simple as possible. And normally we do it every morning about 8:30, 8 to 8:30, just depending on like if we're at the races or something. But I try to put it out there in the most simple terms possible, because the first time I went to church, man, and they started preaching, it was like real confusing for me. And then they gave me a Bible, and I couldn't understand anything in the Bible. But one day I got a hold to this children's Bible. Here I was, 50 years old, got a hold to this children's Bible and thought, this is the greatest thing in the world. So now when we're preaching and someone gets saved that's never read a Bible, I encourage them, pick up a children's Bible. We'll give it to you. We send Bibles to people all over the world. So if you need a Bible, reach out. We'll send you a Bible. It's a gift from God. But we're online every Sunday morning, unless we can't find service where we're at. And I preach. I try to keep it, anywhere from about 20. Sometimes it goes a little longer, because when I start talking about God and talking about Jesus, I get excited and I have a hard time stopping. But I try to keep it short, and I try to just keep it in a normal person's language without using big church words or anything, because I want people that's like I was, that didn't know anything about church. I never went to church. I didn't know anything about church. And I want to keep it simple and talk about what Jesus did for us, and just make it so the average person can go, wow, no one has put it to me like that. Because Jesus died for all of us. He didn't die for a certain group. I hear people all the time tell me, well, if you're not of this denomination or you're not of that denomination, don't let people tell you that. Jesus died for everybody. I don't care what color you are, what race you are, or anything. He died for all of us. And it's a gift, man. It's like a birthday gift. When you receive a birthday gift, if I bring you a present for your birthday and I set it on the table and you never come and receive that gift, it's not your gift. And God gave us Jesus. But if we don't accept Jesus and receive the gift, we're not Christians. And I have people all the time tell me, well, Trampus, no one has said it like that. And I said, well, read the Bible. The Bible tells you God sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And he didn't come into the world to condemn us. He come into the world to save us. And he made it simple. And for these people that tells you you need other people to get saved, no, you just need to hear the word and ask Jesus to come into your life and have faith and trust in him.
I tell you, I appreciate it all. I feel like you were speaking to me when you just said that. I'll be totally honest with you. It hits home more than you'll ever know. I was telling Sherry about it before we came to Henrietta. I was just trying to tell her, for some of us that are like what you just explained, it means a lot to have someone that can do that. I know my father, the creator of Vintage Factory, he's a Christian, but he's on me, and he just wants the best. And I was telling him I was bringing you on and kind of what we were doing, and he was super excited. But yeah, it means a lot to people, your words getting out there, and it touches a lot of people, just so you know. And I appreciate it, and I'll speak for others. We all appreciate it.
Well, my buddy Tim Borgfield was telling me about some of the bikes that your dad has redone. And man, it sounds amazing. And I didn't know it that your dad had actually started the Vintage Factory, and now you're doing this. But it sounds like he's done some amazing things, and just took some old wore out bikes and brought them back to new, kind of like us as Christians, just old wore out people that the good Lord has gave a second life to.
Yeah, I tell you, when we started this, I don't have the talent level he has when it comes to restoring those bikes. He worked with the top names. Him and Marty Smith did a 10 series replica. It's the RC 125. We're going to do an episode on that. We have some cool unseen video from Marty that we did when we did a TV show years back. It's never been seen. There's just a lot of good material. But yeah, so when I took over, it was, I'm not going to rebuild bikes. What do I want to do? I love the sport. I was hooked up with Tim. We're like brothers. And I said, let's bring attention to the sport. So we went kind of a media way. And we just bring attention and bring light to what everybody's doing. And, luckily I've built a very good base, a platform to put that on. I think we're up to like 168,000 followers. So it gets out there, and we try to do everything in a positive light. And I enjoy it. And I feel like this year is going to be one of our biggest years. I can tell you with this podcast, this is our first episode. I couldn't be more honored to have you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on. And you always have a platform here, my friend. And we'd love to have you back on. Maybe come up with a segment. We'll do something cool. And anytime you want to come on and share the word, you have my number. Give me a call, and we appreciate everything tonight.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, and God bless everybody, and keep riding. But remember, we get to do all of it because of God's glory.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. Thank you again for the interview, Trampus, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for doing what you're doing, man. I greatly appreciate it.
Yes, sir.